What, you couldn't wait to start with me?
You scared me.
I have that effect on people.
You startled me.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the broadcast. Hold on, let me get the iPad over here so I can see it. Hope everybody's doing well. Got my good buddy Mike Nieland with me today. Yeehaw. We're going to talk about, I don't know if you can see, there's some snare drums in here. Ernesto, go to that main shot if you get a chance, because we got a lot of snares in here. But first off, thank you for joining us. Hope you guys are all staying safe, having a good time. There's a lot of video coming up besides the broadcast this week. I've got a couple other short drum ones that I'll be hopefully finish editing tonight and get some of that stuff out. We also still have the drum reamping specials and the mix and master specials for all you guys finishing music. If you need some help mixing and mastering, we have some good deals going on right now while we're all stuck in this damn quarantine. Also, we're trying to bring you as much content as we possibly can. So if you feel like help and support us, we do have a PayPal link down in the description. Anything helps so we can bring you more and more and more and more content, because we're going to be doing this a lot. All right, enough of that. Mike, thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
We have talked about this for what, like 3 years?
I've been telling you no for a long time.
Now you had no excuse because you were stuck at home, so.
It's like the most of the movie. It's Friday. You had no job. You think I have shit to do. Yeah, I get it. No, I'm glad to be here.
Mike and I have known each other for, holy crap, a long time. When was that? You were one of the first people I met at Guitar Center. Must have been either late 90s, early 2000, something like that, and we've been friends ever since somehow.
We don't see each other every day.
And we're both pain in the ass. So for those of you guys don't know, Mike's obviously a good drummer. You heard in the intro. He's got a couple really cool like tribute bands, right? Is that what it is? The Police Experience is freaking awesome. Yep. So once, music can happen again, if you ever get the chance to go see these guys, holy crap, it's good.
Yeah, we're bored. We need to go play a gig.
Yeah,
We really need a gig. I was talking to the guys the other day, and there's been times in that band. We've been together for 18 years now. And there are certainly times when it may have gotten physical at times, just over the course of being in a band.
So it was really like, the Police.
Sometimes I wonder if he does it on purpose, but then I realize, no, he's not. But just just to go out and just to entertain people and to watch people, respond to music and be happy, and that's the whole point of it, is we enjoy it, and everybody who enjoys it. I made a comment the other day. I dare the guy, and this goes for everybody who's listening. First guy that comes up and complains about playing whatever song it is in the bar that everybody supposedly hates playing, shut up, dude. You have a gig. Shut up and play the gig and smile.
I know. Yep.
And play the hell out of Brown Eyed Girl.
Exactly.
Play
no
like
more bitching.
It's going to be like Mahavishnu Brown Eyed Girl. It's going to be awesome.
So, yeah. So go check that out if you guys get a chance. It's fantastic. But Mike also works for Ludwig and knows a lot about drums. I bug him a lot. A lot of my questions get answered by him. So sometimes the information I'm giving you guys is because I learned it from him. So we're going to get some good stuff today. So first off, obviously, got the Ludwig, the Green Monster. The snare that's up here, Mike brought a lot of his snares, a lot. I mean, there's so many. You're even missing some of them on the main shot. Doesn't even get them. There's whole group out here on the floor. We won't get to all of these, but we're going to get to some of the good ones. He has a really nice collection, and what he doesn't know yet is I'm hiding a few of these in the back before he leaves, and they're just going to magically disappear and stay here because I like some of his better than mine. But what's up here right now is that's the Supraphonic. What have you done to it?
A couple things. This is it's a new shell. It's I got the shell probably 6-7 years ago.
Hey, Mike, talk into the mic.
How's that?
Yeah.
More?
Pull it over. Yeah.
Okay. I've got about 6-7 years ago, and what I've done differently is I've modified it to be like a vintage drum, which is I've taken off the rubber gaskets. I've also switched the top and bottom hoops to the vintage style 1.6 millimeter hoop. It's a thinner hoop. It's got more flex to it. It's how I hear a Supraphonic. It's how I've always heard them, and I made this one simple modification to mine. And it brought the whole characteristics of everything out of it. They sound great for stock with the 2.3 millimeter hoops and the gaskets. It's a really slight difference. And it's as with any of this stuff, it's a matter of preference and taste. But for I was doing a Led Zeppelin thing, and I wanted that. Is try to get it as close, like everybody who does Led Zeppelin, they're obsessed with, the black labels sound better than the red labels and all that stuff. And so I tried to get the drum close like that, and it just makes it a really friendly playing drum. It
is fun to play. I was playing at sound check, and it's one of those things that makes you want to play it more and more and more. I'm actually going to do to my Supraphonic what you've done to yours. We're actually, when this gets done, we're going to go order the hoops. So I get those in, because that's how I want mine to sound. Bermuda's watching. He said, "Don't mess up."
Thanks, dude.
He actually he didn't say that. I'm gonna cause some trouble.
I bet he did. He probably did.
Yeah. So that's snare number 1. Hey, play it. Man, I forgot earplugs.
Oh, come on.
Oh no, man. I got to mix all day tomorrow.
Oh,
look at that. Look at that. You guys, don't be stupid. Protect your ears. You only get one set. I know he's going to give me a lot of crap.
No.
But I don't care.
This is the first time I've played in about a month and hurt. So my ear, I got it saved up. My ear karma bank is cool.
Yeah, go ahead and play that thing a little bit more. Yep, that thing sounds good. Holy crap. It's got, I don't know if that's coming through online, but the ring in here, the sustain is so nice. It's so consistent and even that it sounds beautiful.
It's controlled, yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing, too, sometimes with ring. I know the tendencies, and I do this sometimes, too, and it depends on what you're going for, but a lot of the times the tendencies are to dry a lot of the ring up before you've even started playing the music, which will cause you to end up a lot of the times with the snare that just disappears in the track, because that ring usually gets eaten up by guitars, by synths, by other things. So if you take that away to start with and then you pull all those other things in, your snare will a lot of times sound small. So if you're ever thinking about Moon Gel or any of those other things to put on there, unless you're going for a specific dry or an old school thing, but if you're big open rock, hear the drums in context first, so you know what it's actually going to sound like with the music. Because sometimes it can sound, in the room, it can sound very unwieldy and bombastic, but you get it in the track, and all of a sudden it doesn't quite sound so bombastic.
Yeah, you can always mute it down later, but you can't add it back in once it's gone.
Yep.
And this drum's wide open. It's a coated dot on the top head. It's a controlled sound dot, but the dot's actually on top of the head. It's kind of a different version than the normal CS black dot. Excuse me. And it rings like crazy, and it's all, you want to start with it doing as much. It's like with tuning any resonant thing. You get it to its maximum resonance point, and then you can pare it down from there.
Right.
Because to your point, yeah, if it doesn't have that tone, it's the reason why jazz drummers and
Stay on the mic.
The reason why the jazz drummers in the old days would tune high pitched. Bonham would tune high pitched. All the British rock drummers.
I was listening to Sabbath. Ernesto and I were listening to Sabbath last night. Holy crap, those drums are tuned high.
Yeah, Wardy's a jazz drummer. Just don't tell him that he plays hard rock. He's a jazz drummer, and he tunes still to this day. He still tunes like that. I've played his current kit, and it still is. It just rings and boings all over the place. And that's the characteristics of the drum kit. And it tends to make the drums sound way bigger than they normally are.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and listen to Ginger Baker. Listen to Ginger Baker live. Or even in the studio, they had these huge sounding bass drums. The main bass drum on that kit was a 20-inch kick. He had a 20 on the right and a 22 on the left. And it was basically an unmuffled 20-inch Ludwig bass drum. But when so you wouldn't think that anything that small would produce that kind of sound, but because it's allowed to breathe and the head's allowed to resonate and push the air in the room, you get this sound.
Yep. And also from a miking standpoint, if you're doing any minimal type miking, say you're not putting tom mics up or you don't want to use them that much, tuning higher is going to help that, because you're going to get more tone to those mics. The lower you tune your toms, if you're not direct miking them, the more it's going to sound like wood hitting plastic in your overheads or in your rooms. It might be tubby, it might be kind of cool, but if you're looking for a note and tone, you'll have to tune them up just a little bit. And even sometimes this one's tuned kind of middle right now. It's not really low, but it's also not really high. But if you could tune it up and in the room it sounds boingy, but when you hear it back from the recording with everything going, it doesn't. Things sound, like you said, they actually do end up sounding a little bit bigger.
And that's for a general application. I mean, you can. It's always, of course, dictated by the music. You know, if you're doing an old sounding R&B track and you want the tight, dry snare, obviously this isn't gonna. You got to pad this down, and it's all based on. But again, to start before you do put any of the muffling and anything on top of the drum to mute it, you want to get it to its most resonant point, I would think.
Yeah, and then go from there. That's a great approach, actually, a really good approach. So that's snare number 1. And one thing I am going to preface this with, the big variable with all these things, well, there's 2. There's obviously what the drum is made of and the size. So that's 2. So I lied. There's 3. But the other one is heads, which is a Pandora's box. And we have quite a few. I'm looking around at all of these. I know some of mine have Evans. We have some different hydraulics right here. There's control sounds. You know, I think I have some HD dries back over there. So we have kind of things are... we have a little bit of everything represented here, at least from Remo and Evans.
Smorgasbord.
Along with a bunch of different snares. All right, let's switch gears. Someone pointed out, I'm looking here, Obsidian says, wow, look at all the tuning tape on the blue snare. I'm assuming he's talking about this one. So, you know what?
The tank.
Let's go to let's take a left turn here. Maybe a 180. Might hurt your neck, but...
Yeah, that was almost a whole roll I think I used in this one. Okay, so this one was made as a prototype years ago by my dear, dear friend William P. Dedamore at Pork Pie Percussion, and it's it's basically his version of a classic 3-ply maple Ludwig shell. It's maple, poplar maple, and then with a maple re-ring in it, and so it's a little warmer, a little drier. I was doing something for a friend of mine where he wanted to try to get this crazy deep ELO Jeff Lynne type thing. And so I hear that as being tuned down really low with a lot of muffling on it. So what I put on the top of this was a black Evans hydraulic with a ton of tape and one piece of moon gel.
Here, go to the right camera. Ernesto, can you pull up the right drum cam? That guy? Here, yeah, so that cam's on.
So tape, and then, of course, just for decoration, the one piece of moon gel at the top. And this head's tuned down really low too. It's down there.
Oh yeah.
So when you slap it on, you tend to get the thud, which is a little something. Sounds like, I don't know what it's gonna sound like to the mics, but it's gonna be thuddy. That's the 79 Henley special.
It's like thuddy, but it's really wet. The snare is...
Yeah, it's got its own spread to it because of the resonance of the head. And it's crazy with a hydraulic head, all this tape on it, and the moon. It still has a tone to it, and it still rings. With all that stuff on there, I kept putting tape on this thing. Okay, is that going to kill it? No, another one. And I put all this, and it's still. And
how's the bottom head tuned on that? Is it tight?
Not as tight as I normally tune it, but it's up there, yeah. But that's what gives you all the crunchy,
yeah. So you have some response.
Snares. So yeah, that's the tank.
I have a different version of that.
Swimming in snare drums.
I need to do a count. Here, fill this thing up.
It's a veritable plethora of snare drums. All right.
So this is different take on a similar thing. It's a Gretsch Renown all maple. I think I have the same snares as you. Oh no, you have. Are these Canopus?
They're stock.
Wow, the color looks like the Canopus. I've got Pure Sounds on there, but it's the same Evans hydraulic. No, it's
This one's texture coated. That one's actually smooth.
yeah. That's the smooth, and that's the textured one.
This one.
Brighter. Not as it's brighter. I mean, it's a completely different drum for one, and the snares are a little bit tighter. It's not as wet sounding, but it's that similar kind of splat going on. Those hydraulic heads I find are fun to do that with. I'm actually going to try this with all the tape now on that thing and see what happens. I got to order a couple rolls of gaff tape.
It was. I remember the night I did that, and it's like the head wouldn't shut up, and it was like I'm going. This is a hydraulic. It's supposed to be dead, and no, that one was. And I'm totally not a hydraulics are great heads. Disclaimer. But I mean, as my own personal playing, I'm a single ply coated guy, and
right.
to play that thing, even you can feel it. It's like pushing mud when you're playing it. But when sonically, which is really all that matters, you know what it sounds like. It's like it just works.
Mm-hmm.
It recorded great.
So what's tuning wise? I mean, I know that one's down, but let's just basic relationship like between top and bottom head. Where do you normally like to have your bottom head tuned? What's your? I think you and I are actually kind of similar on this.
As tight as I can get it without it breaking. I don't tune it to notes, but by the time you stretch that membrane, which is really thin already, and it's even more thin on diplomat side, snare side heads, it gets to a point where you can go and try going from lug to lug and seeing if it's in tune, but when it's so tight, it's there. It's not a matter of it being finally, and you're not going to really hear it anyways. Mm-hmm. So it's more of it's at that point you want my take on it is the tighter the head, the faster it resonates, and you get a better higher end out of the snare wires, and you get more snare wire definition, and that's where the different snare wires really come into play, right? Because you can really hear them on that head, and then in each one, a hazy ambassador sound has its own thing. At Ludwig, we still make Weathermaster heads, the same heads we've made for years. And that film on the bottom head is a different film from Remo.
Right. Which
is a different head from Evans, which is a different head from Aquarian, mm-hmm. and whoever else, Attack and all the other guys that are out there. And they each have a unique sound. And it's not until it's really easy to stay safe with snare drums and be like, okay, I'm always forever going to use a coated ambassador and a hazy ambassador on the bottom. And no matter what drum you put it on, you're going to get that quality out of that drum, So I would encourage people, this is totally, again, it's not a brand thing. This has nothing to do with a brand thing. But you should certainly go out and try different drums and see what they do. Like all of my snare, I think I brought 12, 13 different snare drums today. You told me to bring a lot. You told me, like, I don't care, just bring a bunch.
You did.
Like I said, I've been locked up, man. Each one of these drums has totally different head combinations, top and bottom on it, and it's just what works for that drum, I think. So you can put two drums up and they sound completely different, which is what you want. Why would you want 15 of the same thing?
Yep. That's actually the video I finished about 5 o'clock this morning that I have to finish editing. Was I had just got a shipment from Evans in, and it was different. I did exactly what you're talking about now. I'm like, I'm gonna get some things and try some stuff out here, and I found a few new combos that I liked enough that I shot a little video of it. But I know it can be a bit of a rabbit hole with money, but it's well worth it. Especially if you have multiple snares. Like, you've got a bunch of snares. I'm the same way. It's like, once I get that snare sounds cool there, I leave that sound and I go to another snare drum.
Yeah.
Instead of going, oh, that snare's cool, but let me try a different head on it for this session. It's like, nah, just try a different snare.
And you can. I mean, certainly with a Supraphonic or with a Black Beauty, what's cool about those drums are you can make them sound like anything.
Right.
And they work, they work all the time.
I would say those two snares are really versatile. If you only had those two, you could do about anything you needed to do.
Yeah. There's nothing, and it's been proven on
many
thousands of recordings over and over again, and you can make them sound completely different. They are transparent enough to where you can hear, you can do your own thing to it, and it's also very based on the guy who plays the drum. You can make it tune, you can tune it to make it sound like a certain guy, but unless that guy or girl is playing it, it's not going to have that. It's the physics. It's the mechanics of the big, the size of the body. Little short guy is not going to play the drums the same way a big tall guy is. There's a reason why Phil Collins sounds like Phil Collins and Danny Carey sounds like Danny Carey.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
even if you put them on the same kit, it would still sound completely different.
Which is the beauty of drums.
Yeah.
It's the coolest thing about drums. Is the individuality.
Yep. All right, what's our next snare? What are we going to put up now? Let's go through some of the different metal types and kind of just briefly talk about the characters of each, because I know snare drums can be... It's the one drum, in my opinion, on the kit that you have to have multiples of. Toms, you can tweak a set of toms to sound like quite a few different things, even to a certain extent the kick drum. But snares, you know, I'm not going to get... That Black Beauty is never going to sound like a piccolo.
No.
Even if you crank it. So having different snares, but also understanding what they're made of. So if you've got a certain snare at home, you're like, I got that sound, but I'm really looking for, you know, something that's dry and snappy. What do I get? You know, so what's this? We got the Black Beauty.
Black Beauty, you got an Evans HD dry on top, and I believe you have one of the orchestral snare heads. The
Yes.
the hazy snare
Yeah,
heads on the
the
bottom.
300's the hazy. That was part of my experiment yesterday.
So let's see what this one
Here,
does.
turn your mic up. Very focused.
A lot more control, a lot more focus.
And there is one tiny piece of moon gel on there that probably doesn't even need to be there, to be honest with you.
Right. But these heads have the ring on the underside, and they have the little vent holes on the top to let the air escape out of it. Yeah, it's a cool head. These are great. These are great for when you're doing that cranked up,
Yeah.
you know, tight.
You can
dry
control,
thing.
you can get a bit of ring out of that if you crank it up a little more, just so they don't sound completely dead. But one thing I noticed when I stuck the orchestral 300 on the bottom, which yesterday was my first time using that, yesterday when I did that, but it warmed that drum up. I mean, I cannot believe how much that bottom head actually warmed the drum and took some of the tinniness of the snares out. And then I put some Pure Sounds on it, which the Blaster is my favorite snare wires.
Yeah, those are Pure Sound makes it great. They make all of them. I mean, we were talking today. I've got on the 402, I had 30 strands, and on most of my drums, I like 24 strands, like a little, so I can get a little more slop out of them, and you can detune them a little bit, and you get that boxy, you know, kind of it's Alex Van Halen-y, you know, Bonham-y kind of thing. That's those guys. It's a looser wire, so you get the more of the. It's not so, I don't know, snary, you know,
right?
For lack of a better word, it's got a little more of the actual tone of the drum to it, and it breathes a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I think Canopus makes some fantastic wires.
Yeah, they make some nice wires too.
You know, and that's the thing. It's like with anything else drum. It's like at this point, you know, and we deal at work and when I was selling retail days as well. You know, you're having to explain this stuff to drummers who don't, you know, because there's so much stuff. You know, as we've gone on now, like to start playing drums now and having to like pick your gear now. And then go online and getting beat over the head with all the different ads. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's, you know, and why that sounds really good. And another video comes along, oh my God, that sounds really good. And
I'm guilty of that, man.
Yeah, it's I am too. You know, and drummers are like guitarists in that we're chasing the tone, man. You know, and that's always you hear a guitar player who's, you know, he's trying this pedal and trying this, and they're chasing some kind of tone that they hear in their head. And drummers do the same thing, especially with snare drums. To your point earlier, toms and kick drums, they all have their characteristics, but I think the two most characteristic things on a kit that really stand out are the snare drum and the ride cymbal. And you can identify guys by the snare and the ride cymbal. You know, even not even if they're playing the. It's not even a per cymbal basis, but it goes back to how the guy plays it and how the drummer plays it.
Yep.
Stuart Copeland, an example. I've heard Stuart's played a bunch of different rides and a bunch of different kind of settings, but you can tell when it's instantly within 2 seconds, you know it's him. You know, because of how they physically hit the. You know, Bonham was the same way, and there's a bunch of guys that are like that, and it's how they hit it and how hard they're hitting it. Much like with guitarists, you know, only one guitar player sounds like David Gilmour. That's David Gilmour.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got the hands.
Yep.
He's got the best hands ever. So there's a lot of that plays into it too. So it's really easy with all the information that's out there to go down multiple rabbit holes and thinking it's going to sound like, when you finally get all that gear on there, it's going to sound exactly like that. And
right.
It may not. And you've got to be ready for that. You've got to be open for that and accepting of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's part of you use if you're looking at those people as your idols or whatever, or the people that you're looking up to, you use that as a way to start eventually finding your own voice. Mm-hmm. Because if you're trying to just get what they have, you might nail the tone, but you'll never nail it completely, whether it's drums, guitar, whatever, because you're not that person. So you get to that point, and then you got to go, what is your sound?
Yeah.
And then if you're studio players, you end up having like 5 times the gear. I used to do sessions. I remember one time going to East West and doing sessions. I showed up with like 9 snare drums.
Yeah, well, if you're a session cat, then your sound is whatever you're getting paid to play that day.
Exactly, and you have to have the gear to get that.
Yeah, and you have to get it quickly, which goes back to why you want to have a variety of snare drums. And any studio drummer, and we both know plenty of them, and they all roll up with tanks full of snare drums, mm-hmm. and you can just, and it's not a matter
snares and cymbals. There'd usually be a lot of
and you just pull. It's just a matter of pulling one drum out, like the last thing that you and I did when we did my project a couple weeks ago. It was a matter of going through a few snare drums, and usually it was like you hit it, no, there it is.
Yep,
and it's as simple as that.
Yeah. All right, so what's that made of?
This is Black Beauty is a black nickel over brass shell. The way our brass shells are different because it's not a seamed shell. It's a solid piece of metal that's drawn from one single piece. And they use this machine and they draw it out into the shape of the drum. So all of our drums are U.S. made. And the biggest difference is that the seamless shell. And and there's a thing, and there's a bunch. The Black Beauties and the Supers are probably also the most duplicated drums, and everybody's got their version of it, and everybody thinks they've got a Black Beauty like drum, or some people think they have a drum that's better than a Black Beauty, and that's all great. And marketing's a wonderful thing, but there's a reason, and anybody who's played a Supra or a Black Beauty will tell you there's nothing sounds like it. They just have this character to them, and it's been heard so many times. And you've heard these drums, whether you know it or not. You've been programmed to listen to these drums because you've heard them on so many recordings. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they're on so many recordings is because you just plop them up and they're done. There's not a lot of work you have to put into these to get them to sound right in the studio.
Right.
So it's easy for engineers.
Yep.
Engineers don't want to work.
Really? That's the fun part, man. Okay, so let's say the Black Beauty in and of itself, almost regardless of the head, has a fairly clean kind of sound to it. What if we want something with a bit more character? Let's say you want to maybe just attitude, just something that isn't nice. I
would look at copper or bronze, which we have one of each.
All right.
Ironically enough, we have one of each sample.
Yes, we do.
Would you like to do the bronze first or the copper?
Is that the bronze?
No, the bronze is over on your left.
Where? Oh, yeah.
And the copper's behind me. So we can do the bronze first.
Yeah. This drum I absolutely love.
You want the secret of why it's so good? Should I tell the story of this?
That's up to you, man.
Okay. So when I bought this shell, I bought it from a friend of mine, and he had it in his. This is an '80s bronze phonic that I've had this drum since the mid '90s. Bought it from a friend of mine. He had the shell sitting in a garage, and he also his family had a lot of cats, and the cats got to this shell, and they peed all over the shell, and it ate through the lacquer, and it's really discolored. Is it this camera I'm looking at?
Ernesto, you go to the side cam.
Okay, so you can see here there's a lot of discoloration on it, where the acidity of the cat it burned through it. And I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. It was a great shell, and I've used this drum a million times, but it's always the cat pee thing has turned into a joke among my friends. When I've had friends that want to borrow this drum for sessions, they call me up and they're like, hey, dude, can I borrow the cat pee drum? And I'm like, yeah, sure. But bronze is the most musical metal in my opinion, because that's why they make cymbals out of it. It's warmer than brass. not quite as warm as copper. So it's got a little more of a round, darker tone to it. On the spectrum, I mean, copper is going to be the darkest thing that you're going to get, wherein steel is going to be the brightest, and everything kind of aluminum, brass, everything kind of falls in line. But again, with this drum, I also did what I did with the 402, which was I modified this. I just did this to this drum too. So this has the thinner hoops as well.
Okay.
Which is how this drum would have come stock in this drum. I'm assuming is probably from 82, 83.
So what is the hoop?
It's a 1.6 millimeter.
Triple flange.
Triple flange hoop. Yeah, the 2.3 millimeter hoops didn't really come into vogue until the mid 80s. You know, as a kid, I started seeing them in Pearl ads. They called it the Pearl Super Hoop. And that was the first, because drums for a long time were 1 point, because nobody, drummers didn't hit that hard. And
right.
As PAs grew and bands grew louder, they needed something that had more stick definition to it. You didn't want to go quite to a die-cast hoop. Die-cast hoops can be, they certainly have a great sound and a great attack. But they're fatiguing to play, especially on a studio session where you're having to play over and over again.
Yeah. To
hit that rim all the time. And I didn't believe this. I thought that was all hooey until it actually happened to me, and I was doing a session, and I was having to go in and repunch in snare hits for somebody. And it was the dreaded thing where you're just, in the studio just going, and it sucks.
I know.
Sucks to do.
The die-cast is very unforgiving.
Yeah.
The triple flange is kind of bend, so to speak, with you a little bit and eat up a little of that vibration, but the die-cast is sending it right back up that stick at your wrist.
So this one's tuned, it's still medium, like about where the 402 was. But let's just, for this experiment, we'll give it a quickie.
So, Mike, I got one question from Ty the Sound Guy. He said he came across a snare, and the badge says it's custom built by Pro Drum Shop in Hollywood, but he can't find any info online. Do you know where they made or what?
I'm assuming it was a Ludwig drum?
No, he says the badge. Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I'm reading this right. Across the snare drum, and the badge says is custom built by Pro Drum Shop.
They make snare drums. Yeah, they customize snare drums too. I didn't know they made them from the ground up. I've never seen that badge. The one for years it was around here was, and there's if you can find them, they're great. With the drums that came out of Valley Arts, lot of the '80s Yo-Cat dudes had those drums that were modified by that shop. But Pro Drum modifies a ton of drums all the time. And they're part of a rare group of guys who are, for my money, the best guys that do that stuff are the Pro Drum guys. Bill over at Pork Pie, and then my other dear friend Chris Hewer.
Chris. Actually, Chris has done the edges on almost all of my drums.
Yeah, those are the only three guys that in this town that I would let touch my stuff. I've seen others that do that, and frankly, it's horror stories. And all three of those guys have spent a lot of time repairing drums that were done by guys who really don't know what they're doing and shouldn't be doing it.
Yep.
I mean, I would call Stan and Jerry.
Yeah, that's what I would say too, Ty. Give Stan a call.
He might deny it. We didn't make a drum, but that's just Stan. But yeah, it sounds. I didn't know they had a badge.
I've never seen it. I got to see that actually.
So this one. So I pitched just by tuning it up a couple turns. Now we have a totally pitched up different drum. Sorry.
Ernesto's on in the speakers in here, so he can yell at us whenever he needs to. Oh, my mic's off too. Ernesto's yelling at us through the speakers here in the room. I don't feel so bad then. So I was let me repeat myself. That drum I noticed sitting in the room, even tuned up, it compared to the 402, it has more body. It's warmer sounding, a little fatter and rounder.
Yeah, and that's the warmth of the bronze, and you can hear the characteristics of the metal. Maybe the cat pee has something to do with it. I don't know. That's more of a joke than anything. But
I don't know, man. That's got to be part of it.
I'm telling you, the warehouse full of my custom cat pee snare drum when I get signed and make $1 million. When I finally get my when I
that guy out in Simi
deal,
Valley that has a warehouse with just a bunch of feral cats that just piss on your drums.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll sell
them. Feed them well.
Sell them at a premium.
Yeah. That'll be a thing.
SoCal cat drum.
I'll buy one, even if it's placebo.
So yeah, and this is the thinner hoops, and again, controlled sound head. This one's a little different. If you can find these, I've never seen these in stores, but Remo does one where the dot is underneath it, like on a black dot, but it's actually a clear dot. It's a clear piece of material underneath it, and I don't know what the part number is. I ordered these one time, thinking I was going to get the black ones, and I got the clear ones. And frankly, it's been really cool for me. The black ones, for me personally, I don't like the black dot because I can see it when I'm playing, and it catches, it's like this OCD thing. You're like, oh, it's just a dot, But especially for playing live, you need a little more support than an ambassador gives sometimes. So this was a really good combination for me, and it's got just a regular hazy ambassador on the bottom, and this drum actually has 24 strand wires on it, pure sound 24 strands, not the 30s. But yeah,
that sounds nice.
Yeah,
I like that drum.
Use this drum for forever. Love it.
All right, so let's go to our next version of
the copper
attitude.
The darkness.
I have no idea how it's set up though. You may have to tweak it.
Yes,
There's so many drums.
The raw copper.
So get this. Before you do that, Bermuda says he's got 112 snares and 1,027 cymbals.
Who, Bermuda does?
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that. He's got a sickness.
I told him, I said, I got to come over sometime and see that.
Set him up by the pool, John. We'll be over in a minute. So copper shell, again, same. We make this shell the same way we make all the other ones. Single piece of metal drawn out, seamless shell. But copper's way warmer than everything else. And this one, you'll hear this is just all about the dark tones.
Tweak that one up like you did the other one. Just give it a couple turns. Of course, where'd the drum key go? We'll get them all a little bit in the, these, because this also has a control sound on it, so at least we're kind of not completely apples to apples here, but we're pretty close. What are you looking at me like that for?
Way darker than the bronze.
Yep. Turn back on.
Noticeably different.
Yeah. I don't know if I have my mic on or off. There we go. Yeah, the one thing I like about that drum too is if you do tune it down and where it's flappy, it's just got so much character that it's got a total vibe to it. And one thing I saw someone mention here, and I think this is a good point. Where was that? Justice, I don't remember which snare you're talking about, probably the one before this, but he said for some reason that seems to fit with the kit better, and I think that was the previous snare. And that's a good point. If you want to change the sound of your entire drum set and make it literally sound like a whole kit, change the snare.
Yeah.
Because it'll make your toms feel different, it'll make the kick feel different, the whole damn thing. And sometimes it's just different is cool, and sometimes it's you've got the wrong snare, get the right one, and the whole kit comes together.
And when you're out, and what's cool about snares, we were sitting in a room with a bunch of Ludwigs and pork pies and really cool. But you can go, the albums that have been recorded with, beater snares, go find, I dare somebody to go find an old Kent snare drum, with flat edges on it. So there's not even a real bearing edge on it. Sometimes that drum. I did a session on a thing for a guy who had an old Premier. There was a series Premier did called XPK, and it was the cheap steel drum that came with that kit. That thing was ridiculous, and we had a room full of Black Beauties, and we had all kinds of high end this, but nothing worked as good as that old cheap ass Premier drum, dirty head on it. It was great.
Yeah, heads. Next point. I don't know about you, but I'm not a believer that you always have to have fresh heads to go in the studio or anything.
No, you need a head that sounds good. And like I have the 3 of the 4 drums I played, the coating's worn off in the middle of it. And we've you've also, when we did that other project, you've seen I've got drum kits where the heads have been on them for 15 years, and literally, and it's not broken.
Why? We tracked one. It sounds amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and there is a sound that brand new drum heads have. Absolutely. And there's a clarity that they have, but there's also a character and a mojo that they don't have because, they ain't done no living yet. They haven't had, they haven't been played by whoever's hitting them. And especially with snare heads, I think, especially coated snare heads, there's a beauty to a snare head where the coating's it gets kind of brown in the middle and it starts to wear out a little bit. And that's when a head gets, when it gets cool. Is when it's got some mojo to it.
I agree. Sorry, I'm trying to see if there's any questions over here, and there's one or two. But I'm the same way. Once it sounds good, I don't change it. And if we get something out and it's not bright enough because it's an old head, I literally just go to a different snare. Yeah. And if we don't find it, then I'll consider changing the head on it. But
yeah, it's.
I have toms that way. I have my old Pearl Forum kit, that piece of crap that I love because it sounds amazing. I've had the same Onyx heads on it for I think 6 years. I put them on in the old studio. So that would have been over 7 years ago. Yeah. And I've never changed them.
Yeah, the tom we were talking about, Charlie helped me do a project of mine, and the rack tom, it had a hole in it. It had a puncture hole. It didn't rip, but it was a puncture hole that I didn't want to buy new heads because they had just gotten to the point where they were all worn in and gooey and awesome, and then some guitar player dropped his mic stand on it, and they were so pissed.
Moral of the story is don't let the guitar play around your drum set.
Exactly. Yeah, and tear down fast and get out of the club. But those heads those are the ones I've had on for 15 years, and those heads still sound.
Yeah, that kit sounded great.
Without doing anything to it. I put it up, and I brought 2 kits in that day. I brought my 65 kit, and then I brought a 70 kit. And the 65 with all its, we were joking. You could tell that I played a million gigs on it. The floor tom. It had there were rings on the floor tom from where I'd been putting shot glasses during gigs, and there was a day back in the day it was that kind of just crud that was on the drum head. But that's the character of the drum head, and it's like why would when you hit it you're like why would you change that?
Yeah, exactly. People
spend hours with moon gel and tuning techniques and little tuning gauges and stuff trying to get it to sound worn in like that. Just leave it.
Yep, I agree. There's one question, Mike, here from where'd it go? Let me pull this over so I can actually read and stay on the microphone. Crap, I missed it. Okay, Brian asks, has Ludwig ever made a snare with acrylic or fiberglass type material?
Absolutely, Vistalite series.
Was that the first? Or was that another smaller company that did them technically first?
There was the Ludwig drums, there was the Zikos drums.
I used to have a deal with them, with Bill Zikos. An amazing guy. He's fantastic.
Fibes did some acrylic drums. The drum we make now is a better version of that. It's not as brittle of a material to use. So when we hit it with the edging, the grinder for the edging, they don't shatter. That pure acrylic stuff would just shatter if you looked at it wrong. And the edges that we're putting on the Vistalites now are probably some of the best edges we've ever put on drums. And the snare drums, yeah, those things will rip your face off live. Those things are so.
Oh yeah. Oh man, they project.
Not a recording friendly drum necessarily, but live, when you need something that absolutely positively has to get you through to the crowd, those things are ridiculous.
I used to have a Zikos that was like charcoal. We'd put lights to shine through it, so it looked like it was always kind of smoky. And that thing on stage, it was amazing how loud that kit was. It was great.
Acrylic's got its own thing. It's cool. It's got a cool thing.
Okay, here, Big River Records. He says he's got a 6.5 by 14 Black Beauty, his hand-hammered 6.5 by 14 Black Beauty is by far his favorite snare in his collection. Now, what's the difference? Explain that. We don't have one of those here with us today, but the difference between like the Black Beauty, the normal, non-hammered, and the hammered. What's the hammering do? Just so everybody knows. Saying we do have some hammered brass.
We've got a hammered brass. It dries out the shell, and our shells are hammered by the same guys and the same equipment that hammer our timpani shells. I mean, the cool thing about Ludwig is we're full stop. We make drum kits, and we make snare drums, and we make orchestral. We make timpani. We make marimbas. We make everything under one roof. So our hammering is done by those guys on those machines, and it's different than anybody else's. But it dries out the tone of the drum a little bit. You might maybe use a little less muffling on it, but it's really, really, really slight, and only something you'd really notice under microphones.
After we did that big snare drum, by the way, you guys, just so you know, about 2 years ago now. Something like that. We did a huge Ludwig snare drum library series where I think we recorded, was it 38 snares?
Yeah.
Or something like that. So we went through
40,
probably
40
95% of the collection of Ludwig snares. 3 different tunings, low, medium, high. And Jason Sutter is the one who played. He did a little marching thing and then a groove thing. So you can hear every one of those snares. And each video is about 2 minutes. So in 2 minutes, you can learn what all their snares actually sound like at multiple tunings. It's pretty bitchin'. That's where I actually played the hammered Black Beauty for the first time. Yeah. And
you can hear it on those videos.
I actually prefer that over what I have, which is probably why I have an HD Dry on mine to try to get closer to what the hammered one did.
Yeah, it's subtle differences, and that goes to the earlier point of like rather than having one drum and tuning it 15 different ways to make it through a session. Well, I like that I throw the Black Beauty up and maybe it's got a little too much. Then, okay, let me grab this one and you pull then you can pull the hammered out.
Yep.
Assuming of course you have the wherewithal and the budget to have
right.
5 different Black Beauty snare drums on a gig, but. But no, it's with any hammered versus a smooth shell. It's a slightly drier sound. It's not as out of control.
Right. Sorry, I'm just seeing. I'm not ignoring you if I'm looking down here. Yeah, Casper's. Oh yeah, you know that Forum Kits legend. You've recorded that thing, the kick drum on it. I bought this kit for $200, man. And I needed it one day. I had 2 gigs. I was a Pearl artist at the time. And I had to be at 2 places back to back and no time to tear down. So I sent my tech to one place with this Forum kit that I bought off Craigslist that morning for like $200. I wanted the cheapest thing I could find in case it fell out of the car. I wouldn't care. We put new heads on it. Drove out to Chatsworth to get it. Probably says something right there. Pulled it back to the studio, put heads on it, and we hit it. Went, oh my God, this thing sounds great. I ended up using that. I still have that kit. It's awesome. Casper's, you have recorded that many times. Gretsch Broadcaster, yeah, that's a good one. Let's see, someone says the Mapex Black. I actually like the Mapex Black Panther snares. I think they make some cool. The snares are cool. Big River says 5 Ludwig kits.
Attaboy.
Can you guys nudge them to leave some more here? Hint, hint, Mike. Let me just read through. Man, a lot of brass, maple, metal. I end up being on wood. I end up being a maple guy for some reason. If I go to the NAMM show and go around and hit, every time my ear goes, ooh, I like that snare. What's it made of? Maple. Next booth, hit, ooh, I like that one. What's it made of? Maple. Next booth, I'm like, I don't know what it is, but my ear just is in love with maple.
It's a great wood for snares.
Man, a lot of snares, man. The DW class collector series. All right, next. Let's go to the next drum. We'll answer. So you guys got more questions, whatever. Get them in. I'll try to keep an eye on it, or Ernesto will most likely yell at me.
All right, what do you want to do? Let's see.
Well, you want to go to. You want to do a hammered.
You can put the hammered brass.
Hammered brass. There's so many snares. You probably have to tweak that one.
It's a plethora of
snares. Well, you know what?
snares.
Here's this one and the 5 over there, which is the wolf-tuned one.
right, so this one. Right away on this one, I like the articulation this one has.
Yeah, me too.
To get the diddles off, that was a really it just made you, it drew that out playing.
But you feel it's tighter. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? A tiny bit drier.
Yeah, and that's it doesn't even with just it's only got a couple pieces of tape on it and no other muffling on it, and it's already it's certainly more contained than the other ones were.
Now here's the 5. Now this one. Actually, the last person to use this was Stephen Wolf, who is a monster in a cool way.
Celebrity drum.
So this is it's a 5.5, right?
This is a 5.
That's a 5 version of the same drum. Put my earplugs in and raise that up. By the way, guys, mic-wise on the snare, and I've been using this a lot lately by itself, is a Mic Parts SDC 84 Snare Edition, which is Matt's version of a KM84, but this one has a custom transformer in it, and it's padded on the input to handle the snare drum, and I've been loving it.
So the 5 with a big old napkin on this thing.
It's very unforgiving, isn't it?
Crack-a-lacka.
It's tight, but it's really unforgiving with how you play it. That's one thing with when you start getting things drier and start playing a lot of notes, man. They take no prisoners with letting you know how you're playing it. And this is just stock Ludwig on the bottom.
Yep, stock Weathermaster head, stock Ambassador on top. Yeah.
Yep, I think.
Same on that one too. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. It was tight, yeah. I mean, there's tight, and there's there's really, really, really tight.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, some of that too is the it's not as deep, so it's faster.
You can feel when you have it like that, and especially when you lay in them, you can feel the bottom head. There's one of the drums that I brought is a drum that Chris Hewer made for me, and it's 4.5 inches.
I'm gonna get that right now.
This one he made out of an old 70s. They call them the Jasper shell. It's an old Gretsch shell, but he made this for me years ago. And this is the one. This is a great. I use this on gigs. This one is for I want to do low volume gigs, because with this one, when you get hitting on it, you can feel the bottom head. You can feel it bottoming out if you play it too hard.
Right.
And the same with some of the 5-inch drums too. Unless they're cranked up, policey type tight. You don't feel the bottom of the head. You feel the top on that one. But for me, especially using this, it's a kind of a heavier stick. It's a bigger 5B. I've noticed on gigs that this one I can feel the bottom. I can feel this one, the bottom of it.
Right.
But again, this is a maple and gumwood shell. So this is.
It doesn't sound like it's that shallow.
No.
I mean, you're not laying into it right now, but it doesn't sound like it's that shallow. And what are you got die-cast hoops on this?
This has die-cast hoops top and bottom. Because I wanted to try to I needed to have I wanted to have the attack. And so I never, even when I got this drum made, I knew because I wanted it to be I was going for a certain thing. I was going for like, I love the snare drum that Phil Collins used. They still, used all the way up until now if he was playing, but it was a Noble and Cooley snare that's the same size as this one. It was like their version of it, and that drum was killer. That stuff. You listen to the Genesis Live stuff, and when Phil's drum parts would come in, you could tell when he was playing.
Right.
And that drum just had this crack to it. So I'm like, okay, when I go to make that, that's what I'm going for. And so when I talked to Chris, those were the edges he put on it. It's got a little more of it's a 2-ply back cut, I believe, on these instead of a 1-ply, but it's just a typical. This is just a typical 45-degree angle on these. So there's nothing terribly special about it except just the combination of everything. It's not there's not one thing that makes this drum do what it does.
It's all those things together.
This is also an 8-lug drum too. It's not a 10-lug.
I love 8-lug drums.
Yeah.
Especially snares. Man, the sweet spot is so much bigger.
It's softer to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't crank them quite as tight and get them up there.
No, but you don't need to because the sound, they project and they do their own thing. On the topic of Black Beauties, this last year we released Black Beauties in an 8-lug format. And the notice, it was cool at NAMM watching people go up and hit them, and you could just tell as soon as they hit it, they lit up, and they could totally feel the difference. Yeah, everybody's hit a Black Beauty, everybody's hit the 10-lug typical Black Beauty, so everybody knows what that feels like. But then they hear that extra throat that the 8-lug drum has, and it was just it's a really noticeable difference, and a great option to your arsenal.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of the next drums I get. Okay, so hey, while we're on smaller drums, and you'd mentioned Stuart Copeland. Oh. Where? It's over here. Okay. By the way, you guys, you should check out Hewer, H-E-U-E-R. Hewer Drumworks. Man, that guy makes...
Hewer's Drum Labs.
Is that what it is, Hewer Drum Lab? Amazing stuff.
Okay, so this thing. So we talked, when Charlie and I talked last night, we talked about this. As he mentioned, I do a tribute to the Police, and in going out and buying gear for the gig, I had to get this drum, and this is a late '70s Pearl Jupiter, chrome over brass, really thick chrome over brass, and this is what was used on the Police records from 1980 on. He got this drum right before they recorded Zenyatta Mondatta. That album was recorded with that drum and triple flange hoops on it. This has the die-cast hoop on the top. This is basically the drum that Tama took because they took Stuart's actual drum and then they copied it and made their version of what he uses now. Mm-hmm. But the Japanese drums, especially, I think for my money in the late '70s, early '80s, were just made. They were made so well, and just they were bulletproof. And I've actually got a couple of these drums. 2 of them I use for the Police gig, but one of them I keep just tuned down regular because it's a great chrome over brass shell. It's really versatile, and it's a cool drum. But this drum for the Police gig, it's all about attack. It's all about it's all about attack. And then the history of Stuart using this drum, like I said, he got it. It originally had a triple flange on it. Before they went in to record Ghost in the Machine, Jeff Seitz, his tech and a dear friend of mine, Thomas sent him their zinc die-cast hoops, and he put one on the top. So the difference in snare drum sounds between Zenyatta and Ghost is the addition of the die-cast hoop.
Oh, wow. I'm going to have to listen to that.
And it's a noticeable difference. So Zenyatta has this pop to it, and we all know that. We all fell in love. I mean, who doesn't love, if you don't like the sound of the drums on that record, you're probably dead already because that drum sound just kills. But when Ghost and then subsequently Synchronicity came out, there was a noticeable difference in the snare drums. Part of it was they recorded it in a living room, in a house, in Montserrat. Mm-hmm. So you were getting the room sound of it. They found a room that sounded really good, and they just put the drums in it. Plus, it allowed Stuart to not have to look at Sting when they were playing because they were not too kind to each other back then. But I got this on for years ago, and I've been using it on the Police gig ever since. And we'll run it through its paces a little bit.
Oh yeah, this thing is I got definitely putting earplugs in.
Yeah,
I played this at sound check a little bit. Holy crap!
Talk about keeping the heads on. This head, it's another CS dot head with a clear dot on the bottom, and there's a set list that I wrote on this head. It's from February 28th, and this head has to be. It's got to be at least 6 years old.
Yeah, that head is beat to hell.
But it's not,
and it sounds amazing.
But yeah, I don't want to change it because even playing that gig, because we hit hard on that gig, but with the dot underneath, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah,
I've never had in 18 years of that band, I've never broken a snare head, and it's funny now. It's like I'm all confident of it. Because I can go play a gig. I'm like, it's not going to break.
Watch.
And I know it's going to happen. When this whole stupid Corona thing is over, I'm going to go out and I'm going to play a gig. And I'm like, okay, let's start the gig. Flap. And it's going to go right through it's going to go through the head.
All right, let's hear this sucker.
All right. So this is.
Oh man!
Huh?
In here it's just.
Huh?
I didn't even think through my earplugs. That was killing me.
I think I'm bleeding. So yeah, that's the drum, and to get that is you crank it up really, really tight.
I think we could use that for sound replacement for gunshots in a movie.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Like I was saying earlier, when I go in to do gigs in this, I will always. When you're doing sound check, you do the kick drum and then you do the snare drum, and I will always hit this thing a couple times before the sound guy's ready for it in the house, because I've literally watched guys jump out of their seat when I hit this thing the first time. It's crazy how loud this is, and it physically hurts to play it sometimes. I switched in the middle of that to traditional grip just because I kind of got into the mindset of it helps you play Stewart better to play the traditional.
Right. Oh
grip.
yeah.
But
yeah, that was one thing I know when I was playing it at sound check. It's not necessarily the most fun drum to hit.
No, and it's not like you wouldn't do buzz rolls or any double strokes on this at all. It's all about that backbeat and that snare drum sound, and it does this particular one does this one. This one has one function.
Yeah,
and that's all this drum does.
When you hit that, it kind of feels like you're punching a wall.
Yeah, but when you're driving the band with it, like when you do that crack, that intro thing and the band comes in behind it, you're like, all right, we're off to the races.
Oh, and it slices through a mix. That's for damn sure.
It certainly does. So that's that one.
All right, so let's see. What time we at? We're at 7:09. Let's do just a couple more. If anybody's got any questions, let me know. We'll grab those at the end, especially if you got any questions for Mike. Let's do just a couple more snares. What are some? We've kind of gone through a lot of the more typical, I would call it, I guess. What's something that we got left that isn't so?
Well, there's we got some beech. There's a birch shell with beech hoops on it over there. That's the blue one over there.
Over there?
Yep. That one was originally a 60s a 60s Premier tom shell, and that I got from a friend of mine. And this is what all the toms. You look at old pictures of Keith Moon. It's like a Keith Moon tom. He had three of the same size tom going across. That was so cool. Keith didn't care. It's great. And Chris did this one. Chris Hewer did this one. And it's a mutt. It's got like die-cast hoops on it. It's got this old beater Ludwig throw on it.
Here, you're in that camera's over there.
It's got a Gretsch gold butt plate. I have no idea where I got that from. So yeah, it's a total mutt, but for a drum, it's really lightweight. And just a second. But because it's so light, oops, sorry. It's also 8 inches deep, so it's really hard to get it to sit right. But this one, so it's got a coated vintage Emperor on top, and these are the Emperors that were made more to spec as they were in the 70s. So if you're like for example, if you're a Bonham guy, and you want to really get that sound, the vintage Emperors are closer, as I understand it, to what the heads were back then. So it feels thicker than an Emperor.
Yeah, they do.
And that's why I wanted a big thick head on this thing with a bunch of muffling, and it was going to be like a ballady type snare. So this one, when you're in it. So really dry.
Yes.
Really warm, and that's this is a birch shell with beech hoops, is what the old Premier drums were.
Oh, nice.
I think it was that. Was it birch? It's birch and beech. Totally different sound. And another thing, these lugs are held on. The old Premier lugs are also held on by one point. Most lugs, especially double-ended lugs like this,
Yeah, you've got
go in
two
at
screws
two.
in. Yeah.
So you're protruding through the shell at 2 different points. These are the one in the middle, and to the point where if you take these tension rods out, you can almost spin the lug.
Spin the lug, yeah.
And it's just a totally different. This is an example of like going and finding something totally beater and making something out of it. Like this thing was a joke when I first got it, and thank God that Chris was absolutely. I was ready to totally throw it away, because it just wasn't ready for prime time, and
Right.
and once we figured out this combination of it was great.
Man, I took my Pearl Forum snare to him, and he put baseball bat edges on it. I mean, just to give it a sound. It does one thing, and it's cool. That is a very 80s sounding kind of mid-tempo ballad to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've used it on a few different recordings like that. This one doesn't get used very
Ernesto,
often.
we should pull up a giant plate reverb, stick it on there, sing some Steelheart right out of the 80s. Good. I don't know why that's the band I thought of.
You could have gone Bonnie Tyler and you got Steelheart.
Come on. I'm out of coffee.
What's sad is I picked Bonnie Tyler.
I know.
The hell was I thinking?
We're losing it. All right, let's get one more in here. Pick what's left, man. What's one of your favorites?
We should talk about the 400. The 400 that I have we've actually used this before on some of your stuff, but that's the 5 over there. This one's it's a vintage drum. It's from 1965. Everything on it except the snare wires and the heads is original. But yeah, just a great old 400. If you're starting with any snare collection, if you're beginning to amass a snare collection, you should start with a 400 and a 40 and a 402. Because it all starts from there.
Right.
We still make this drum. We still make it same as it ever was. And they're all over the place. You can find these, everywhere. Baseball bat muffler in it.
I love those things. I wish that was in more snares, man. Still.
Now we do it. Well, we finally got a new one now that it's notched. So after a while, these old ones, they would strip out and they would just kind of fall over.
Right.
These ones, the new ones have notches in it, so you can go click, 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 and it'll stay
right
in whatever degree, either like in full contact or light contact, or you can adjust it like that. And it's a really cool piece. But this one, I've had another one for years, and this is just one of those drums. Like as soon as you hear it, you know it.
Right. All right. Let's hear this sucker.
Here we go with the snare stand again. Let's see. classic.
Yep. It is a
classic
very
sound.
it's one of those kind of drums that would almost always work, even if it's not quite the right one for a tune. It would always sound good.
Yep, because you know what that sound is.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. Hey, we got a question here from Daniel. We keep talking about edges. So he says, what does he mean? I don't know if he's talking about me or you, but when he mentions having the edges done.
Having the edges done. Okay, the bearing edge, and if I'm over explaining this, I'm sorry, but bearing edge is obviously where the side of the drum comes down like that at an angle, and it's where the head makes contact with your shell. A lot of times what happens on older drums, back in the day, edges weren't necessarily done with anything that was that precise. They were done by hand at some point. And that, on older drums, it can go one of two ways. Like you can find a drum that has, and I've seen both these. You can find a drum that has the crappiest edges you've ever seen on it, and they're not level. You can take the head off the drum and put it on a flat, hard surface like glass, and you can see light coming through it because it's not perfectly straight all the way around. And that drastically affects the ability to tune it to itself. Mm-hmm. And when the drum head's not in tune, even when you have it muffled and patted down, it still puts out these weird overtones. Especially once you get a mic on it, you can hear those overtones, and you may not be able to put your finger on it right away, but it's just something you can kind of file it under. Something's not right about that drum. So when you have the edges redone, you take it to a professional who knows how to do this. And they will cut the edges, which is usually just sanding them down to where they're level. And that's the biggest thing that happens to edges. If they weren't cut right originally, you want it to be a straight, flat surface all the way around the drum. Sometimes you get these waves. I've seen drums that have come off the line from other companies. There was a company years ago when I first met Chris. There was a drum company that had an artist, and I will remain nameless, but the guy was huge guy, and they made his own drum for him, and walked in and Yamaha. Ooh, yeah, did I say that out loud?
I didn't hear anything.
Yeah. Anyways, it happens. I mean, everybody's screwed up plenty of drums, but this one came in and it had the snare bed cut into the top and the bottom of the drum. And that was something that Chris fixed. And that's an extreme example but when you go to put a head on that thing and try to get even tension out of it,
you can't.
You can't do it. So you want to have somebody who knows what they're doing and that you trust, because it's not something you can really go back from.
Right.
The guys that don't know what they're doing will grind it. They've this methodology of grinding it till it fits.
Yeah, and that is no bueno.
No, it doesn't work. So
and then you have different types of edges too. You've got 45, you got dual 45, you've got round over. You got
30-degree edges. You got sometimes if you have the drums there are snare drums that are these crazy. They have like 30 plies and they're 5 feet thick, right? Those you want to maybe have like a 60-degree edge on. Mm-hmm. And it all depends on you're determining how much head to shell contact you're having. You want to try to not put it. You're trying to keep it as the head being touched as little as possible. With a double 45 edge, now you've taken that edge and you've moved it in the drum, okay, in the shell of the drum. A single 45 or a single 30 sits on one side of the drum. When you put a double 45 on it, now you've moved that apex to more of the center of the shell, and you have a response that's more along the same lines as a timpani. If you look at timpani or a gong bass drum or any of those, the head is larger than the tube that it sits on, and it stretches over the edges. And when you get into the double 45s, we use the double 45s on our Oak series because it helps with the attack of it.
Yes.
And it's a different take on it. A standard edge and a standard starting point would be a single 45 cut with a back cut, and a back cut is what they do on the back side of the head, on the back side of the edge. So on a snare drum, it would be on the outer side of the shell, and that's the part of the edge that really kind of snugs up into the collar, this part of your head. So the less material you have touching it, and the more evenly that it's placed and touching, and if it's touching it in the same point all the way around the drum, that's going to make it way easier to tune, and it's going to be a way more versatile drum too. If the tension's not properly distributed, you're not going to have the full range of tuning that you would normally have. So if there's a drum that you try and you can use your drum dial or whatever, if you use one of those things, and even if it's like, oh, I can't figure it out, it says 70 all the way around and I can't, then it's probably a bad edge.
Yeah.
And
I find that on toms a lot, especially the bigger ones. If I'm having a growl or something I can't tune out, almost every time I'll pull the heads off and just lightly run my fingers, and I can find dips.
Yep. Yeah, and it's a simple fix. It's a bit unnerving, like if you.
But don't take sandpaper to it yourself.
No, please don't do it yourself.
Cool. Well, everybody. Okay, we're gonna do one last one, and then we're done. We gotta go for today. I know I said that was the last one. I'm like the guy at the bar that keeps going, can I just have one more drink? One more drink? And that used to be me 12 years ago.
Can you quickly say what's on the snare mic-wise?
Oh, yeah, I did that. What I'm using on the snare is a Mike Parts SDC 84 High SPL edition. And that is Matt McGlynn is the guy that owns Mike Parts. It's his version of the KM84. But this one's slightly different. About 6 months ago, I was kind of fishing around for new snare mics. I was looking for something that was going to help me get the body of drums. Even if I'm using two mics, I wanted something to help me get the body. So I talked to Matt about his KM84. He made a custom one that has their custom transformer in it. It's padded on the input, and this has a hypercardioid capsule. And the off-axis rejection is fantastic. So it keeps the hi-hat out, and what bleed you do get from the off-axis rejection doesn't sound horrible like it does on a lot of dynamic mics. It's not, which is terrible sound. And it handles, it's handling everything Mike's thrown at it. And trust me, he's hitting the crap out of this. So I've really fallen in love with that microphone. And we're not doing anything to it. There's no compression, no nothing. So it's just the mic and it's Mike and Mike. I knew that was going to come up at some point. All right, one last snare. Snare. What are we doing?
What do you want to do?
I don't know. What haven't we done? These we've all done.
We've got the beach
Where's that one at?
right there.
Oh, here we go. Yes, we're going to stop. The beach.
Beachwood.
We're all dreaming about going to the damn beach once they open the things back up.
Yes. Another Bill Dedamore special.
Bill Dedamore is
From
Pork Pie Drums.
Pork Pie Percussion.
Makes fantastic drums.
We can talk nice about Bill because he's a nice guy.
He's awesome, man.
So I'm gonna pick
He's
this
done did some of the edges on my Pearl session kit, actually.
Yeah, and again, great work. And out of the very small amount of people that I would trust touching my stuff, he's one of them. And he's a great dude. He does killer work. Support your local drum guy. I'm gonna put one piece of moon gel on this because this is a brand new head, and there we go. So this
this has a whole different sound. Yay!
So Beachwood, drier in my opinion than both maple and birch, and just a different tone. You know, we've all heard a million maple drums. We've heard more birch drums than we know because of so many years of recording customs. Those were birch.
Yep.
Thomas Superstars. Those were birch. That was the industry standard in birch drums. And it's funny what's happened to birch over the years. The birch has been put into this thing where it's perceived as a lower end wood because of the kits that it comes out on. And you see birch kits that are, sub $1,000 price point. And there's this take on it, that birch is because it's less than $1,000. It's not going to be as good as maple or whatever, and everybody has this perception of maple being the best wood, and it's certainly the most widely used and the widely accepted.
I think it's just maple. It's so versatile. You can tweak it to a lot of things, but even if sometimes it just sounds nice or characterless in some ways. Sometimes. But it's just, you could just use it for so many things. I think that's why.
And beech has its own, as you'll hear, beech has its own thing. It's drier, it's warmer, I think, than even birch. Birch has this warm kind of thing to it. Cherry's another wood that's like that, very warm sounding wood. But beech is just got its own, got its own, sits in its own spot. You want to hear a great example of beach drums back in the day? I believe Manu Katché was a beach guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had one. There were beach custom. Yamaha made a beach custom kit for years.
I do remember
and
that.
that was a fan. Those were so cool, and I always felt bad because it was people were already. It was hard to understand unless you went and sat down and played the drums what they were, and a lot of those drums got kind of lost in communication because those drums came out along the same times that everybody was doing Crazy Woods, and and they're harder to find. It's hard to find a beach drum kit because it's the perception of it.
Right.
It's really not. Does one wood better than the other? If you think it is.
Exactly.
And don't get caught up in the perception of stuff, and don't get caught up in, well, my friend said that. Well, unless you played the drum, you don't know, and your friend could be totally wrong. He could be a great dude. But he could be wrong.
You can still be friends with him.
You can still be
He's
friends.
just not right.
And you don't even have to, you know what? You don't even have to gloat that you were right afterwards when you realize that you were in fact right and he was an idiot. But it's
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, exactly. So beach. Let's give it a little beach.
I noticed that has a lot more kind of lower mid-range in it, or like between the low mid and the high mid, like 500 to 700 hertz. There's a bit of that paper thing that happens in there that can be very cool. Actually, It's a tiny bit splatty right through there. It's in a neat way.
That's the voice that it has, and nothing. I've never heard something that sounds like these drums. And this would be the kind of snare that these are always good for, in recording. You have the proverbial, the 57 that's in a room somewhere aimed at the floor, right? And what's that microphone? You throw it up, like, oh my God, that's the best drum set, right? This is one of those secret weapon kind of tools. We're like, you know what? Let's give this one a try and see what happens. And you're often surprised at because it sits in its own mix so well. So yeah.
All right, everybody. Want to say thank you for joining us. Let's see if I missed any last-minute questions. Caspers wants me to steal one of your snares.
No.
Justice said one question here. He's considering purchasing a DW brass or nickel snare. Any thoughts or suggestions?
Buy a Ludwig.
I knew that was coming.
No,
Sorry,
I mean,
I didn't mean. I did.
No. I mean, no. Truth be known, I mean, again, it's all personal preference. And at this stage in the game, everybody makes great drums. And DW makes great stuff. Yamaha makes great stuff. Sonar makes great stuff. Tama makes great stuff. Everybody got really good at it. Back in the day, it was like, you had the companies would kind of go in these waves, right? Where like Ludwig was on fire and like Slingerland and Rogers were in the dumper. Mm-hmm. And they all took their turns, right? Yeah. And there's all these, and the drums that have risen to prominence over the years. In the 80s, it was Tama. In the 90s, there was this Yamaha DW kind of thing. And then and it's all kind of shifted as to what's in vogue. Then all these boutique companies came up out of nowhere. And it's like everybody with a garage and a router is making a drum kit. And some of those are really great drums. There's nothing and like there are drums that may not sound as good to your ear as other drums. I would say for the question, I mean, go do your best to go hit one in person.
I think that's important, actually.
Yeah.
You really have to hear it for yourself to make that decision. That's the only way to do it. It's like buying studio monitors. The only way to know what's right is to go check them out for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, for what the materials are that made those drums, I mean, the two materials that he's talking about, yeah, there's no reason why those wouldn't be killing sounding drums. But is it really the right thing? When I was in retail, there was a lot of times when, and it's another thing to take into consideration. Yeah, we say go hit the drum, but there's the drum is only as good as the room that it's in. And if you go into a drum shop somewhere and the room that they're in is all carpeted and it's dead, and or conversely, you go to you go to a big box guy and they have a bunch of drums on the wall.
Right.
Wow, those drums got a lot of high end to it. Yeah, so is that wall.
I know that it's a foot away from as you hit the thing. Yeah,
exactly. So I certainly work who I work for, but I wouldn't disparage anybody's stuff. And that's the thing with snare drums. It's like how many drum kits do you need? You need one that does this,
I have
one that
6.
does this. Yeah, me too. Okay. Do I need all 6?
No,
I need one.
I don't even need what I have.
Yeah. But snare drums, it's endless what they, in certain years. And if you can go and you go down the rabbit hole of finding, you hear about the drum that, I heard that so-and-so, for all the Neil guys out there, for all the Neil Peart guys, the drum that did most of the records was a Slingerland artist model. It was a 3-ply, very similar to a Ludwig shell, 3-ply maple poplar with a ring in it. And people are going and seeking those things out, because they hear it on the record. Right. First and foremost, go and if you're hearing a sound, I'm really hearing this Copeland thing. I want to sound something that sounds like Copeland. Well, go research it and find out what he used, and then start there. And does that mean when you get it home it's going to sound immediately like that? No, but it's a
good starting point.
Good starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. Yep.
Well, cool, dude. Thank you. I'm glad after all these many, many years we finally were able to do this.
Yeah, and I quit calling.
It only took a virus. Yeah. Somehow I got deleted out of the phone book.
Hello?
Charlie, who? What?
Click.
I don't know anybody from North Hollywood. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Ernesto, who is in the control room, been running the switch, doing the sound, making fun of us the whole time, I'm sure. We'll be back on Thursday with another Q&A. We'll find a new topic to go over, so we'll see you guys on Thursday. Thank you. Stay safe, and go make some recordings.
Wash your hands.
And wash your hands, especially after you touch your drums.
Yeah.
Is that a metaphor? All right, guys. Everybody, take care. See you later.
See ya.